Do you think the China's reaction is, we could be see it as a very beginning of the prolonged and destructive trade war between the two world economics, superpowers?
So China's response was very much expected and anticipated, despite the weakness in the stock market today. I think in general, the U.S. talk precipitated some type of reaction. And so if you look at what China has announced, it's very similar to what the U.S. has proposed in terms of being a $50 billion, 25% tariff on a number of different goods. It's important to make the point that talk is one thing and action is another. And until we really see signs of actions being implemented, my thinking is that a lot of this plays very well into Trump's hand of being a tough negotiator, a businessman, and talking one thing, but really using those comments to lead to negotiation with China on several issues such as intellectual property and other matters.
Yeah, so you think most of them, part of that is just the rhetoric?
I think it's absolutely rhetoric. I think it would be troublesome if it did lead to tariffs down the road, which potentially could happen, but I think both countries realize that it would be very hurtful. The U.S. is China's top trade partner. China is the U.S.'s third largest trade partner.
For sure, yeah.
So it would certainly be detrimental and harmful to both countries in the long run, and more so based on the perception and what would happen to investor confidence and business confidence in terms of investment in the future. The economic impact, as we know, has been very minimal. It would be minimal, probably, given the level of tariffs announced.
Yeah, no one wins from trade war, and as you mentioned, that China is America's third largest export market for goods. But anyway, this morning that China just respond to the U.S. tariffs, and China slaps tariffs on 50 billion of U.S. goods. And also, in the meanwhile, the U.S. President Donald Trump just tweet comments that we are not in a trade war with China, and the war was lost many years ago by the foolish or incompetent. Yeah. So you follow him on Twitter?
I do follow Donald Trump on Twitter, yes.
And how do you feel?
I think that his comments in terms of having a trade deficit is certainly correct, that really half of our trade deficit is with China, which makes sense because we obviously do a lot of trading with China. They're our third largest trading partner, and so intellectual property issues I think are a concern. I think we have lost many manufacturing jobs over the last decade. Something needs to be done. I don't know that tariffs are the right answer. I think there's other avenues, from my perspective, that would be more effective in terms of anti-dumping, things that wouldn't necessarily lead to retaliation in the way it happens. It is a problem that U.S. companies wishing to enter China cannot simply operate on their own and must take partnerships with Chinese companies, and whereas Chinese companies are allowed to simply operate.
That's what I want to ask from your point of view, yeah.
I think there's no easy answer, but it is an issue that is important to a lot of people, that needs to be addressed, and I think hopefully Trump's rhetoric will lead to negotiation and that we can figure out a mutually beneficial type agreement that will certainly
hopefully.
benefit.
And then what could be from your point of view, the best possible way to approach trade with China in the current situation?
I think initially the tough talk was important, but it really needs to end and really lead to more dialogue, more than just blasting China. And some of this is populist type rhetoric which started during the election, which really caters to Trump's constituency, that meaning the people that voted for him like to hear tough talk, like he's trying to save American jobs. But honestly, it's going to take some dialogue. And we know that when Trump has talked to President Xi, it's been very different on the phone than really his rhetoric that serves his constituency. So I'm not really all that alarmed. I think the market anticipated there would be some reaction to this. I don't put much stock into the volatility being based on China's response. I think that this is something that has started a few months ago and that we're in this new age of market volatility. And the uncertainty creates the volatility. But it's not China's response really that can be pinpointed as saying it's not a time to rush to conclusions and think there's a big trade war and that there's going to be tariffs. I think that's really, it's important to take a deep breath and realize that this is likely a very positive step for both countries.